The world of wine is big. It's really, 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 really big. But that doesn't mean that you can't find your way in and around it, and I'm here to help. My name's Eric Goodmanson, and I've been helping make wine here in Napa for over 15 years. So join me as I talk with people from all over the wine world, taste wines from all over the globe, give you tips and information, and we're gonna have a bit of fun along the way. Welcome to Wine Up Top.
Wine Up Top is a one-stop shop. Wine Up Top with Eric. Mighty fine time, gonna learn about vines. Wine Up Top with Eric. With a K.
Hello, class. I'm your Professor of Pinot, your coach to Cabernet, your Dean of Delistage. What? This is offensive? To who? To scientists? Son of a... Welcome back, everyone. Wine industry's got a lot of cliches and truisms to it. And one of my favorites is great wine is made in the vineyard. Another one that goes along the same lines is you can make bad wine from great grapes, but you can't make great wine from bad grapes. Now, all this is to say, essentially, that to know something about great wine, really just wine in general, you got to know something about vineyards. And to know something about vineyards, you need to know something about vines. So let's head outside and talk about vines. Getting to know vines, we're going to be in the vineyard. And I just love being out here. I really feel like I'm at home out here. One of the first things I like to talk about when it comes to grapevines is that a grapevine is typically two portions put together. We have the rootstock, which is the roots. There's this graft union where it meets the scion. So those two pieces have been grafted together to make one vine. Now the scion itself is what we would think of like Pinot Noir, or Chardonnay, or Cabernet. But this grapevine here is two grapevines put together. Now above this main trunk, we've got two arms that are extending out. There are different ways in which you can do this. This happens to be a cordon, or an arm. So we have two on this main vine here. Along this arm, we have a spur position. And from this spur position, we get the two shoots. Now they shot out of a bud earlier on, a month ago. And so we had bud break, and these shoots started growing out of there. Now at this one position, we've got two shoots. Along this shoot are different nodes. And at this portion, we see a cluster. So each of these little portions is going to be a berry. Now they're going through bloom right now, which means that they're going to self-fertilize and form berries at each of these. On each shoot, we typically have two clusters. A shoot can form more clusters, but what we use for wine here are these two clusters. We've also got our leaves. And so different varieties have different leaf shape. This is a Pinot Noir, and so it's got what's referred to as a Burgundian shaped leaf, which is big, sort of like a palm of a hand. Different leaf shapes have sinuses along here or different teeth patterns along it as well. Now another main way to train a vine here is cane pruning. And we've got our main trunk here, and instead of two permanent arms coming off, we've got two canes. So this is a 1-year-old cane from last year. Now we've got the different positions where we see a shoot. There's a lot to know about grapevines, but these are some main points that'll help familiarize you with grapevines, which can help broaden that knowledge about wine in general. And so we've hopefully planted a seed to help grow some roots. And today, with our first guest, I've got a very good friend of mine, Matt Crafton. Matt is the winemaker at Chateau Montelena. There is a rich history with Chateau Montelena that is the springboard for this conversation. That conversation being, does legacy matter in the wine industry? With Matt's position at Chateau Montelena, that allows us to really kind of take a look specifically at one winery and how that plays into legacy. Snapshot opinion. Does legacy matter from a place like Chateau Montelena?
It's a really good question. I think to break that up, it's does legacy matter to whom? Right. And for what, essentially? And I think you tied everything together, and you tied all of us together, which is conventional, but I think is also traditional when we talk about the wine industry. And I think one of the ways I look at things now is that there really isn't a singular wine industry. I'm not sure if there ever was. You look at the bottom shelf at the grocery store, all the way to the auction houses, entrepreneurs. So I think there's definitely more of a linear designation. And then again, taking your original question and kind of parsing it a little bit, I don't think there's an objective answer to whether or not it matters. Does legacy matter for Chateau Montelena?
Yeah.
Right. I think the answer is absolutely yes.
A resounding yes.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I think we can look at parallels outside the industry that help answer the question too.
Yeah.
So whether we like it or not, we're considered a luxury brand. Right or wrong, I think the outside world looks at it. If you were asked, our CEO, Bo Barrett, if we're a luxury brand, he probably wouldn't be able to give you an honest opinion. maybe not a definitive answer.
Right.
Legacy is one part of our story.
Yeah.
We're very proud of where we came from.
Yeah.
But we understand, because there are plenty of examples of other brands, both inside the wine industry and without, where people have rested so long on legacy, they've essentially rested themselves into irrelevance.
Going back to the bigger question of today of does legacy matter? Like, how do you fit that in to a younger generation of drinkers? Like, is it education? Is it, or just a hope that it's squarely on their shoulders for them to look up this information or happen to catch, Bottle Shock on Netflix, By the way, if Chris Pine ever plays me in a movie, I would be walking around just like strutting everywhere.
No doubt. You have one repeat in your house. You and I are both millennials. I think I'm at the very top of the cohort. Yeah, and I think you are too. And so that when you start looking at individual cohorts of people, there's no question that at this point, the elder millennials that we are, like, we're starting to come into our own from an income perspective.
Right.
We have a lot more disposable income, and we all know that as much as we talk about,
which is the cycle repeating itself the way it's always been.
Right. But that's what we hope. Right. And so there's some question on whether or not that's going to continue. And I think that's part of a larger sort of macroeconomic trend. Like, we need to continue, like, growth needs to continue in this country. It seems like every day I read something or see a headline about how millennials can't afford houses, and all these sorts of things. And we're not even talking about the cohorts behind them. So I think a lot of that there's probably some truth to it. There's also some hyperbole to get clicks. But I think there's a piece of this where we really need to continue, like, the engine that allowed the boomers to buy our wine was the engine for the engine that was, and hopefully still is, macroeconomic growth in this country.
Yes.
So growth still needs to continue in the economy. As soon as we start getting into a place where people don't believe there's growth, then things start turning into a zero-sum game. And for me to succeed, you have to fail. And I think one thing that Napa has always done very well is we have the understanding that the opportunity to be able to reach new customers far outpaced the supply of wine here.
Right.
So there was an incentive for me to sit here and have this conversation with you, because, Eric, if you win, I win.
Something that I've sort of noticed, and I think Montelena does a good job, as well as what we try to do here at Bouchain, is to create not just a tasting, but more of, the hot word is an experience, right? That's what is maybe separating millennials from their dollars to come to Napa and do this kind of thing, because it's only been within a relative amount of time, call it 10 years, where you used to go to a tasting room and you would stand essentially at a bar.
Yeah, you'd belly up.
You'd wait for your drink. The attendant would, the bartender essentially might come around now and again and talk a little bit about the winery or the wines, if you're lucky, and then they'd go on to the next person.
Totally.
And so now it's very different. Like, here we have a falconry experience. There's
we gotta do
tours. Yeah, like, it's awesome. You can hold a falcon. You can sit next to an owl. Like, it's pretty badass, actually. And then, having events, but it's also within the sort of standard tasting at places, not just here, is you're sitting down with somebody and they're explaining to you as much as you want to know about wine. Like, the people who are into wine here and are selling it now, it's not just blah 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 down the rail, and it's what do you want to know about? Do you want to talk fermentation, grape growing, barrels, whatever, that kind of thing? And they have the ability to do that. And so I think getting back into the larger, talk or discussion, that does lend itself to a legacy and not just a history. Like there's plenty of wineries in Napa that have history, but
Real or
legacy,
fabricated.
real or fabricated for sure. But like what I want to believe is that yes, legacy does matter within the wine industry. There just seems, and the reason I, bring it up with you specifically is just because I don't know if it's a specific time in our history, Napa or the wine industry of the New World or California or West Coast. Like it seems slightly scared or negative about its own future.
Mm.
And so, we're very concerned about who's going to be the next group after the boomers to come buy our wines.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple things I want to unpack on that. So first one, going back to the tastings and the experiences you were talking about. I mean, the counterpoint to what you said, and I agree with you. I think experiences overall are good for the Napa Valley brand.
Yeah.
Right. So the risk in that is that it becomes more about the experience and less about the wine, right?
Very true.
Because you can take a similar experience in any beautiful part of the world that doesn't necessarily involve the wine.
Yeah.
And that can possibly be replicated. That said, there is something to be said for exploring the wine and enjoying it in the place that it was created. So I think that can be a double-edged sword, but I think done properly, like you guys do here,
right,
I think you're providing a real service to your customers. And I think that's fantastic. The counterpoint to that with the bellying up to the bar, so to speak, is let's go back to what we were talking about in terms of the cost of coming to Napa.
Yeah.
Some of these experiences, I mean, even the ones we offer, they're extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And so again, if I'm a younger person, or let's say just someone who's new to wine, and I want to visit 4 wineries in a day, maybe I don't
get a little buzz on.
Maybe I don't want to have a 3-hour experience, right? Maybe I want to walk up to the bar, and maybe I just want to splash a Riesling Sauvignon Blanc. And so I can see it. It's going to attract different kinds of people, and so I think the question is, who do you want to attract?
Right,
because you're selecting for a very specific group with long experience.
Yeah.
I think that ties back again to why we really need to make sure that like Napa continues to be an engine of growth, an engine of attraction, and an engine of aspiration for people.
Yeah.
But it has to follow with like the normal economy, like real incomes have to rise.
Yeah.
Right? And if it doesn't, then we're not the only industry that's going to be affected by that.
Thing I want to touch on, because we can geek out a little bit about some wine stuff here now, is plays into tradition, not necessarily legacy. And so tradition, since Montelena has a strong foothold in the tradition and legacy of Napa Valley, moving to DIAM. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, DIAM is essentially a technical cork.
Yeah,
it's a natural cork product, but it's basically been ground up and reconstituted. And the thing that it's really fighting is TCA, which is a corked wine. So if you ever get a wine where it's kind of smells like wet cardboard or something like that, the flavor's off, the acid's all wonky, the smells are all crazy, it could be corked. And so by using a DIAM, it's essentially guaranteed to be TCA free. Now, the other thing it's doing is creating consistency for many years. And so each bottle that you pull of this is going to have the same flavor profile. Which year did you move fully to DIAM?
Yeah, so first off, I'm always somewhat reticent to like pimp for a product because
there are multiple products out there that do the same thing.
Who knows where things are going to go. But no, we have a very strong partnership with DIAM. I wish there was a lot more drama to the story just for your viewers. The reality is there wasn't. So for us, I think one of the things that Montelena has done exceedingly well for the last 50 years, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary, is that we respect tradition by not like hearkening and looking at it and saying we need to repeat it.
Right.
We look at what got us here traditionally, and that was always through being creative and being innovative.
Yeah.
And so for a very like stalwart brand, that comes as a surprise to people.
Yeah.
So that was one piece of this. So there was never a but we've always been in punched cork.
Okay.
What I'll tell you is that I think the TCA issue is going to get resolved.
Yeah.
And I think it is being resolved even
Just
off
through
the
the
punch.
farming of actual cork trees and also production.
Yeah, and the production process is cleaning up. So I think that is going to continue to narrow over time. So, but for us, it was the second piece. It was the consistency.
Okay.
And so a big part of Montelena and a big part of our legacy is ageability.
Yeah.
So we've trained our customers, right or wrong, that they can lay down our wines sometimes like almost indefinitely.
Yeah.
And that presents its own set of challenges in and of itself. But it also means that, you know, we're asking them to put their trust in us. And there are only two things that touch your wine, obviously the bottle or whatever container you use and the closure.
Yeah.
And for us, the variability we were seeing just in how, I mean, the old adage is vintages don't age, bottles do.
Yeah.
And so we were seeing it even at like 5, 6, 7 years.
Okay.
We're pulling 2 bottles from the same case that never left the winery. And you were seeing 2 different wines.
Yeah.
And they weren't bad.
Yeah.
They were just different. And so you're presenting these wines to people. Our staff's presenting these wines to people, and it's hard to reconcile because you're pouring, you know, they're pouring one bottle and it tastes like A, and they pour a second bottle and it tastes like B, and both of which are good, but they're both different. So what DIAM did for us was it really, as you said, it narrowed that variability. And so we moved over to DIAM with the 2014 reds and 2015 whites. And in doing our research on it and we did our trials on it, it was really hard to like go halfway.
Yeah.
It's like you either believe in this closure or you don't.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in it, don't put any of your wines in it. But if you do believe in it, why would you use anything else?
Yeah.
And so to me, it was one of the few times it's been like a very binary decision. So you either you believe the testing, you do your own analysis on it, and if it's right, you make the switch.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how do you pour? And I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot, but it's like, how do you say, okay, well, this is a really great closure, but it's not that great because we're not using it on all of our wines.
Yeah.
And so we use their top of the line closure, which has the 30-year integrity guarantee.
Yep.
And I'll tell you that there's been no looking back.
Yeah.
And I think we've had like maybe 1 or 2 people be like, what is this? This doesn't look, and the response is always, well, how was the wine?
Yeah.
And they're always like, the wine was perfect. You know, from the beginning, Montelena has always had a policy that if you get a bad bottle, we replace it. Like, and I think at first when I joined the winery, I was like, that's crazy. Like nobody does that.
No.
Especially on not a food product or a beverage product, but it's always been a question of integrity.
Yeah.
And so like those are the values that I think like transcend legacy. They transcend tradition. Like it's what built the tradition and built the legacy. And those are the values we need to maintain going forward.
A commitment to the consumer, to the wine,
That's right.
to
Well, just
the brand overall.
Exactly right. Even if you don't care about the consumer, just a commitment to the wine gets you there.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I think that actually sums up things nicely because with a closure, we're preserving legacy here.
Mhm.
A nice little tie-in together. The topic of AI being on people's minds these days, I'm going to read 2 reviews of Chateau Montelena, and I want to see if Matt here can choose which one is written by a human and which one is written by my computer.
Great.
So, okay, first one. The 2019 Chateau Montelena Chardonnay impresses with its elegant straw-colored tropical fruit aromas and delicate floral notes. On the palate, it balances richness and brightness, showcasing flavors of pear, apple, and citrus zest, complemented by hints of toasted oak. The restrained oak influence allows the fruit to shine, resulting in a sophisticated and approachable wine. Versatile and food-friendly, it pairs well with grilled seafood and creamy pasta dishes. While it may benefit from additional aging, it is already a highly enjoyable wine that embodies Chateau Montelena's commitment to quality. Seek out this remarkable Chardonnay for a delightful experience. That's one. The second one. This wine continues to excite from vintage to vintage. With such skill at the wheel, the slight turns and twists every year are a joy to experience. The nose holds you in place with soft wafts of ripe green apple and melon. The soft, elegant fruit is cleaved by a refreshing run of minerality rushing into your senses. On the palate, elegance and depth is the theme, with the softness of the fruit felt on the nose carrying through, giving the wine a subtle weight. The natural acidity flits through the wine. One moment you're perceiving depth, and the next refreshment. This is still an American Chardonnay done right.
So 2 questions, and I don't know if I'm breaking the rules here. So first off, I need to know who is the human who wrote, and second, what did you tell the AI to do?
Keith Beavers,
Okay.
from Vine Pair.
Vine Pair, okay.
And I asked AI to write me a review of the 2019 Montelena Chardonnay in 110 words or less.
Okay. That's hard. So let's see.
And
So-
for anybody looking for a good wine podcast, Keith Beavers has a really good one.
Yeah, Vine
Talks
Bear is
about
awesome.
that. Yeah,
We love that.
Talks about history of Napa. It's very fun, funny, and just full of information.
So my first thought originally was that the first one was AI.
Okay.
Because a lot of the descriptors I recognize from like our tasting notes, and that would be searchable online.
Yeah.
That said, Keith also would have had access to those. I like the whimsicality, if that's a word,
Sure.
out of the second one. To me, I don't know if could I see Keith using the verb cleaved in it? No offense, Keith. In describing our wine, I don't know. That's really hard. Like I said, my gut was the first one would be AI.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is correct. Okay. You are correct. And so when I was reading these and looking at this originally, I was like, this is going to be difficult, you know? But I think there are clues in Keith's, even the last sentence, like, this is still an American Chardonnay done right.
Yeah.
Like, that's the sort of review that I enjoy, like going back to the things that have intent within them.
That's right.
But as much as I wanted to believe, like, oh, I could pick that out, like, that's a human writing that,
right?
It's not so apparent anymore.
No, I love it. Maybe I don't have to write tasting notes anymore. Probably the bane of my existence.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But, I didn't want to offend Keith. I do love your work.
Well done, Keith. But it brings up a really good question. I mean, and I don't know how we're doing on time, but it's tasting notes in general are something I want to die.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot of people who would disagree with me on that. But going back to your our original one of the original discussions we had at the beginning, at least, in thinking about people trusting their palate and liking what they like, I feel like when I have to write a tasting note and somehow explain what you're supposed to be experiencing, I'm telling you that you're not smart enough to be able to experience it on your own. So I have to spoon feed this to you. And
like there's a dose of condescension sort of baked in.
Baked into it. Just the entire concept is that you're not sophisticated to understand this wine. Like the trade is does not agree with me on this.
No. So I write the tasting notes for Bouchain, and I am allergic to the standard tasting note.
Right.
I'm much more interested, if I'm going to try to write about something like this is about the sense memory I get. Mm-hmm. So when I smell and taste this, it's like I'm brought back to the Midwest, and it's my grandmother's apple pie kind of thing.
Sure.
And so that's one part of it, but then I can expound on that and talk about, how that made me feel like, oh, the sort of fresh greenness is like riding on the mower with my grandfather on that farm in Iowa and that kind of thing. And so I don't want to tell you necessarily what to smell and taste. I'm more interested in saying, this is how it made me feel. Maybe you can get a touch of that as well when you drink that.
I like that. I think that's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
I think those kinds of notes, and again, I write the ones for Montelena. I think the way you write them is I think a great way to tell a story and to share your perspective without being somewhat condescending. I'm just not about tasting notes. Yeah. And it's not it probably sounds like abject laziness. It's not. It's really just about this really the sense of humility in terms of saying that this is what we've created and we really love it. Yeah, and we hope you enjoy it too. And maybe it's going to hit you in a different way that hits me, but I hope it brings you some happiness and some joy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm more, that's why, getting something from somebody like Keith, who's expounding a bit more other than
perspective.
A quick blip that you might see in a sort of traditional publication.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I mean, again, going back to the art metaphor, which I think I've completely blown out in this chat, but it's you wouldn't, you look at a beautiful piece of artwork and no one says, well, use purple number 4. Right. And and this, it's no, the composition doesn't really matter. It's or the individual parts don't really matter. It's the composition that matters in terms of how they all come together. And that should make you feel something. Yeah. And so again, I just think the whole concept of tasting notes probably needs to go away.
On that note. Yeah. And so I want to thank Matt for his time and insight. And if you want to find out more about his wines, ChateauMontelena.com.
Montelena.com.
Montelena.com, baby.
Yeah.
Awesome. Bouchain actually used to be Chateau Bouchain.
Did it really?
Got dropped because there's no Chateau here.
I want to introduce you to my friend Hannes.
Hi.
Hannes and his wife have their own small brand called Waldelli Family Wines. They make Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir.
Wait. It's pronounced Weldele Family Wines.
Did I not say that?
No, it's tried. It's Weldele.
Why? One more time?
Weldele.
Yeah, that's tough. Actually, this is a good kind of lead into a segment I thought we could do where we help people pronounce difficult wine terms. I mean, you're from Germany. You speak German, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's help the people out. What do you think? Oh, you know what? I've got a name for it too. We're going to call it native tongues.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think?
What do you have in mind? I feel like you don't respect me, and this is just a perpetuation of a stereotype.
Fine. Let's try this again.
You know it comes with a shirt, right?
Feel better now?
Actually, yeah.
All right. Can we get on with the show?
Yeah.
Okay, in today's Native Tongues, we're going to go over a few German wine words. So the next time you're in a restaurant or in a wine shop and you see that German section, you'll know what to do. All right, take it away, Hannes.
A Riesling.
This is a white grape that produces an aromatic white wine. Now, some of the best examples of Riesling are grown in Germany, correct?
Yeah.
Now, this is a wine that can be in many different styles, from very sweet, semi-sweet, sort of sweet, to dry. And by dry, I mean all the sugar has been fermented out and there's no residual sugar.
Gewürztraminer.
This is another white grape that produces another beautiful aromatic white wine. And it just so happens that here at Bouchain Vineyards in Napa, where we work, or I work, we make both a Riesling and a Gewürztraminer. Now, this is a really cool variety because the skins are actually sort of a pinky, coppery color. I love it.
Mosel.
Mosel is one of the 13 wine regions in Germany and takes its name from the nearby Mosel River. Now, kind of a fun fact, some of the world's steepest vineyards are in the Mosel, up to like 65 degrees.
Rheingau.
This is another one of the 13 wine regions of Germany, where 78% of its vineyards are planted to the Riesling grape varietal.
Auslese.
I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on this, but this refers to a sweet style of Riesling and translates to select harvest.
Trockenbeerenauslese.
Now, I included this because it's fun to hear an actual German say it, and it's ridiculously long and it's hard to spell, but it's a fun word, and it means dry berry select harvest, or translates to that, and it's an even sweeter version of Riesling.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Can I get out of these lederhosen now?
Just about. First, I want to thank Hannes for being such a good sport. And I would encourage all of you to go to weldelafamilywines.com, where you can take a peek at the selection that they make. If you're into small production wines where they do everything by hand, I would encourage you all to take a peek at that. So, thank you very much. I don't know why you're complaining. You look great in these things.
Thank you. So do you.
Oh, thank you.
Wine Up Top is a one-stop shop. Wine Up Top with Eric. Mighty fine time, gonna learn about vines. Wine Up Top with Eric.